Right. Thank you very much for tuning into this. So I'm quite excited for this presentation. That's not a good place for my head on the light. Just so I'm going to get my notes up as always. So today I wanted to do something that just gave us an overview of the whole process that we're following, because it's very easy to, when we start working together, we talk about what goals are. We have some idea of strategies in terms of, what your nutrition is, what your workouts need to be, and we track progress on a week basis. And sometimes we're catching up on a more regular basis every couple of days to, if I'm just looking at your food, or I'm sending you a message at the end of the week. So we tend to be working together in quite small blocks of time. Of course, we'll have our monthly check-ins as well. But on a month-to-month basis, not an awful lot of things can change, or in the sense they feel different. Okay, so what I wanted to do today was help you to understand about what the 6 stages to success, basically, and I wanted to explain to you what they are, and also what the foundations are that are essential to build over this journey that will set you up to be able to do this for the long term. Okay, because that's important. Part of what we know, without exception, I think everyone who's come onto this is fed up of sort of that old idea of being on a diet, and then you end your diet, and then you go back to how you were before, and the weight comes back on again, and you're in this sort of yo-yo situation. The dieting tactics that you use never feel sustainable. And we're all of an age now where we've probably done this for lots of times, far too many to count, and we're fed up of it. We don't want that. We want to have something that helps protect our health and makes us sort of feel good, feel strong, understand how our body's changing, and help to improve that and optimize it with the tools that we have, so that we're looking at lots of long-term health, long-term fitness, managing weight gain over the long term, and out of that cycle. Okay, so it's very easy to forget, as I say, when we're in this sort of day-to-day or week-to-week, we don't always realize that we're following a process, but we are. And we don't always see that we're progressing through different stages on a journey either. And that can be true of anything that we do. We don't, with work, you don't always realize how far you've come. You might, in terms of if you've ever bought a house project, you can feel like you never get there, and then suddenly you think, oh, actually, I've done a lot of it. I can't say that yet. But we don't always see that we're making progress, and we don't always look back and see what we've learned, what we've accomplished, and that's what I want this today to be about. And what I want to say before I go into that is it's really about giving you the big picture, because I want you to understand more about what to expect in terms of what your development can be, and also to think about where you are today in the context of that. But I also want to say it's important to know there's no real set time limit for each stage. So everyone's journey is unique. We're all individuals. It's affected by how much time we have, how much stress, how many other distractions we might have, in terms of how we progress, pace that we want to set for ourselves. Some people don't want a very quick 12-week plan. They want to have, they want to take the time and make things a little bit easier, and they're very happy to, incorporate in, better habits over a gradual basis, over a longer period of time, I should say. So, we're all different. So, and there's no rush. It's not a race to finish. We're on our own journey. So that's important. Just wanted to say that before I start looking at the 6 areas. Because what we're really trying to do with this, if the terminology that we always tend to fall into, and I struggle to be in that, to come out of that sometimes, I should say, is that we think about diet. It's just so deeply ingrained, but we're not. We're changing our mindset, and we're creating a system or a framework, another way of looking at it, that we can stick with for life. Okay, so as I go through these stages, I want you to think, how well have you mastered each stage? Where do you maybe still feel there is work to do? And maybe what things can you start adding if you feel that you're ready to go on to a next stage? Okay, so might be helpful in fact, I think I'll write this in the group. So if you don't have a piece of paper, don't worry, but I will pop this in the WhatsApp chat. Can't say that, WhatsApp chat. Because these are the 6 stages. So I think it's helpful just to maybe jot these down. First one is meal structure. Okay, so that is about, in the definition of that, is an eating pattern that's going to give you all the nutrition that you need for good health, consistent energy, and being able to manage hunger whilst being genuinely enjoyable. Okay, so that's our step one. Step two would be then routine. It's creating a routine that makes that happen, that makes you implement that meal structure week in, week out, consistently. So that includes your meal plan. That includes shopping for the right things that you have, maybe a little bit of food prep or getting things out the freezer ahead of time, whatever that little system needs to be, so that you have those 3 good meals a day with the right amount of protein on repeat forever. Okay. Then we have self-awareness. So you almost have to you have to understand the nutrition principles first. You have to get into the habit of making that second nature, just to create. Then we can start to focus on learning about our individual triggers. So I call this self-awareness. So that's learning about what are our unique habits that cause us to overeat or, snack too regularly. What are the things that might happen that mean that our old habits start to creep back in? Whatever it is, we have to learn about what it is about for us, the circumstances that mean that those old habits creep back in, which are responsible ultimately for that little creeping weight gain that adds up over the decades. And I think really where we are now in our lives is that we may have put weight on. I'm the same as everyone. In our late 40s or mid to late 40s and onwards. And we don't really know why that's happened. A lot of it's to do with those little eating habits that we've not really noticed anymore, that we don't really notice happening. But if we don't keep a check on those, and we let that weight gain that's happened in the last 2 or 5 years continue unchecked for the next 10 or 20 years, where do we end up? Because that's not something that sort of level is going to start to affect our health in the future. So we have to be aware of what those triggers are for ourselves. So that self-awareness is a really important part of this overall process. And again, it's, we're all different, and it's really important because at the end of the day, you've seen millions of diets in your life. They're all probably based on very similar principles. It's the things that derail us that we have to understand, because that's what we've got to learn to manage in the future. So that's number 3. We've got our meal structure, we've got the routine, and then we've got the self-awareness of the things that knock us off our stride and mean that we deviate from that structure. We don't manage to implement that routine. The next one is goal clarification. Now, I put that in as a 4th one because everyone will start working with me or any program like this with a goal. And that goal might be, to be a certain dress size, to look a certain way for a special birthday, to be stronger, to be healthier. There may or may not be a particular weight goal, but we have some vague ideas of wanting to be stronger, fitter, healthier, leaner, don't we? Okay. Now, I don't think at the beginning of a process, and if you ever sort of done anything around sort of process, having a really clear goal at the beginning of something is really important. But in my experience, and this is both from working with people and myself, is that I sometimes don't think we really know what the goal is. We know generally that we want to be healthier, or we want to lose weight. We don't actually know why. And sometimes there can be a little bit of a conflict in the sense that we might, not buy into diet culture, or we might know it's not realistic for us to be what we weighed when we got married, for example. Or we might think we want to lose weight, but it's not really enough to get us over the line. It's not really enough to get us over the line to do the work that creates that routine and that self-reflection. Okay. So what happens, I think, is that we start with maybe an initial goal or an ideal that we want to work with. But as we go through this process of the structure, the routine, the self-awareness, we start thinking about we start putting these sort of changes into practice and feeling better in ourselves, I think we can start to realize or find other goals. And I think what's particularly pertinent for us as a group of women and where we are in our life, midlife can change us quite a lot, and midlife can be a point where we see there's a lot changing, things that are changing without us, not by us creating that change, if you like. My daughter's away at the moment, and the other night we watched TV, and at the end of the night we sort of walked upstairs, and it felt really strange walking up into an empty house, because usually my daughter's upstairs. Now, I don't live in a very big house. It's just a very standard 3-bedroom semi, and not big at all. But walking up the stairs knowing that my daughter wasn't there, it just felt really empty and really weird, and I didn't like it. And I almost got like a little glimpse of the future when she wouldn't be around. And that's the sort of change that is happening to us now. There are things changing that are just a natural progression of life that can be quite daunting. I know a few of you have got children at a similar age group or going to university, and it's making us realize that things are changing around us, and we have to then find something else to do after years of hanging around waiting for kids, or looking after parents, or being in a family, because family situations change. So it's a big change, I think, then, that we can start to think about much bigger, much deeper, and much more meaningful things at this stage of our lives than how heavy we are. And that's where I think this original goal that we might have around losing weight, it doesn't have enough power anymore to really make us create this change and really commit to it and do the hard work to get there and stick with it for a long time. Okay. But I think when we go through this process and that we start thinking about that, some information can start to come to us. And we can through the process of what we're doing, improving our health, prioritizing ourselves, we then can start to get a little bit clearer about what the goal is that we want to achieve and what could be important for us for the next stage of our lives. And I know some of the people in the group have got that themselves. I dither a bit. I go from one day to the next thinking I'll do this, but then I think, I can't leave my daughter, and then do I want to do that? And I'm not sure. I know I want to do something exciting, but I can't quite put haven't quite got to the point where I can put a line in the sand, but I can feel there's something happening, and there's something coming, and there's change happening. And I've been able to lead into the process of, the meal structure, the routine, and my motivation to break my old habits and get rid of all the triggers that send me going back into unhealthy eating and sort of food patterns. I'm using this growing goal, or this growing sense of needing to be strong, fit, mentally healthy, confident for the future. It's part of that journey. So that's what I mean about goal clarification. We start to feel more motivated and more determined to make some of these changes in our lives. And then once we start to get some clarity around that and start to experience goals that are really meaningful to us, well, then we can start to think about creating a bit of an identity shift. And that involves becoming the person that you need to be to achieve that goal, and aligning your values and your practices so that you start to make progress towards that. You might be setting new boundaries for yourself. So there's things that you're going to be doing that almost are changing who you are as a person through this process, which sounds rather grand and sounds rather, how would I say it, almost overstating what the importance of changing your diet can do. But I think that's really what happens. So I've worked with people who've come into this who've never really done much strength training before, for example, or never really done much exercise, or not for years. And they might describe themselves as lazy or unmotivated or fat, or or negative things that we often talk about ourselves. And suddenly feeling great and doing exercise is becoming a part of who they are and a part of their identity. And we're starting to stop calling ourselves sort of flabby, unhealthy middle-aged women and starting to think about becoming strong, confident, capable middle-aged women, building something exciting or new, or for our future, whatever that looks like. So we're having to sort of change our values. And of course, as time goes on, things that we would have identified with as being children or parents, those roles are changing, and that can be quite a sad thing, of course, if you're letting people losing your family. I think most of you probably know my dad died, and that's part of the process that we go through, sadly. But that's doors close, new doors open, and there's a lovely period now where I was chatting to my mum on the phone last night, and she was saying this is the age where you just really have to go for these things because you're strong enough, you're fit enough, you've got everything that you need to go and do them. I was talking about buying a house in Italy, and that's exactly it. We have this golden window now where we've got a lot going for us in terms of what we've achieved and what we can achieve, and we're changing into that new person that is different to what we were 10 or 20 years ago, and that's lovely. And I think that is one of the upsides of going through the menopause, in a way, is that it almost draws a line. We talk a lot about symptoms of menopause, but actually once we get past that, there's a lot on the other side that's really positive, that's really exciting. So we've got our meal structure, we've got the routine that we're sticking to, or we're establishing to make that happen. Then we're starting to learn about our triggers, our habits that are a barrier for us to sticking with the meal structure, establishing that routine, learning what they are and unpicking them. We then have the goal clarification, which is starting to get a sense of what we really want for the next stage of our life, and using that as fuel to give us the motivation to really go for it when it comes to the routine and the meals. And then this identity shift, which is a mindset change, and another part of that mindset change is just letting go of that whole diet mentality and actually being able to move forward and create a healthy mindset around food, so that we're not acting like we were 10, 15 years ago, where we're on and off bad diets all the time. We haven't got time for that. And then finally, there is an ongoing reflection process. And, I'm a big fan of journaling, and it's something that's just helped me enormously over the past. I've journaled in one way or another all my life, but it's helped me enormously probably over the past 5 or 6 years, very specifically in terms of me understanding my own relationship with food, breaking old habits, finding ways to sort of get past, negative behaviours. And there's still that ongoing reflection that really has a lovely role here, because we don't go through each of these stages. We don't sort of, yes, I suppose you can tick off understanding your nutrition and finding a meal, a repertoire of meals that you love. You can tick off the fact that you've got this habit, these routines really sort of as not established as non-negotiables in your life. But that goal clarification and that identity shift are things that overlap, and they're also things that can take time to settle and for us to understand what they are. So we're sort of working between those, the self-awareness, the goals, the identity shift. That's a work in progress for, as long as it takes for us to know what we're doing and why we're doing it and start to move forward. And that means that we need to be reflecting on where we are on an ongoing basis. So I've called that ongoing reflection. And that just is about, like today, I guess, we're talking about some of the processes and the transitions that you're going to make. That reflection process is about you sitting down with a pen and a piece of paper and finding those breakthroughs yourself, focusing on the changes that you've made, on how far you've come, looking for all the little tiny positives that you experience on a day-to-day that if you don't look for, you can very quickly take for granted. But that's so important if we want to reinforce these new habits and increase the motivation to get up and write a meal plan, to plan your meals, to stick to them when you're tired. They can all really help us with that, because we remember how much better we feel when we do it. Because if we don't proactively make ourselves remember, we forget and we don't realise what going back to our old ways will feel like, and we'll get pulled into it eventually. But that reflection can also help us to refine our goals as well. Like I said, I'm not 100% sure of whether I'll go buy a house in Italy or build a personal training business up a mountain somewhere. who knows? But I do know that that's something I want to explore and think about. I know that I want to do some endurance events, so that's been part of my reflection, that I can put that in as a small goal, and that's then giving me action plans that feed into what I've eaten today, and the fact that, you know, after this I'm going to have a workout, and after that I've got a protein shake planned in for afterwards, so that helps me with my recovery process. So, you know, these things all sort of start to work together and give you that structure and that focus to keep moving forwards. Because I genuinely believe that this can be such an exciting time for all of us. And through the journaling that I've done over the past year, I'd say, so relative, you know, quite recently in terms of, you know, what, you know, my journey around this, one of the things that's been most powerful for me has been just understanding what, you know, what I want to do in the future, and really finding how I can really commit to making changes and just push my motivation to just a whole new level. And as I've talked about before, thinking about that mental strength that I'm actually working on, and seeing the fact that I'm going to go and work out when I really don't feel like it as a mental strength tick and a little victory that's going to help make me become more stronger and more resilient and more able to do difficult things in the future, because that's something that's important if I want to go and create new and different things to what I have now. So that's how we sort of think of the context of this. You know, we've got this lovely opportunity as women to create this very healthy situation for ourselves, get stronger. I was chatting to someone yesterday, she's not a client, but she's 69 and was talking about doing this with me. And she's, I mean, that's fantastic that you're 69 and you're still thinking about how you get stronger and how you make your exercise more effective and align your nutrition with your goals. Our parents wouldn't have been doing this and thinking about that. So we've got this phenomenal opportunity to really become very strong, capable women for the next, I hate saying these things. You don't talk like that, do you, when you're in your 30s and 40s? It's just suddenly now when you start talking about that. But it's true, and I think we a lot of us share that same mindset. We're starting to feel like we want to make the most of this time and really go for it. And that comes back to how we take care of ourselves and learn to do all these things for us. So that's just what I wanted to touch on today. So have a think about that, you know, and this is why it's so important to get the meal structure right and understand what the basics are. How much protein should you be having? How do you split your meals across the day? What are the foods, the meals that work best for you? Okay, because that's an individual thing. Which are the meals that you really enjoy? You know, do you have to switch that up when we go from summer to autumn and then autumn to summer to keep yourself enjoying that food? You've got to nail that. You've got to understand what that is. Okay, that has to be a non-negotiable. That's not an easy change. That can take time. That's okay. Next one, routine. You have to have that routine that makes that happen week in, week out, day in, day out, even if it means, to begin with, writing down what time you make your meals. You know, quite often when I'm coaching people, someone might work a long day or certain shifts. We almost have to plan for the different types of days that we have when we're working versus when we're not working. Otherwise, we get caught out and it all goes all over the place. And little things, I forgot to take chicken out the freezer this morning, so I had nothing for my lunch. So I've just had I've been just all over the show trying to think of what to have, because I just hadn't done that thing. And that little tiny deviation really messes with your mind. You know, I was thinking I'll just have cheese crackers, and I could feel all those old things coming back in. There's nothing wrong with that, but if I had cheese crackers, I'd be starving after. But it's that routine and that organisation and that preparedness and that planning for different eventualities that means food just becomes really easy. We don't have to think about it. We've got energy, we can work out, we've got time for our families at the end of the busy day. We just forget it. We can just get on with living our lives. That's why it's so important. And that can take quite a lot of time to get that routine really established. And until you've nailed those two things, you can see then how it becomes a little bit harder to really notice about your bad habits, to understand your emotional eating triggers and to spot when stress is affecting your routine. I mean, we can start doing that fairly soon, but to really be able to focus on breaking an emotional eating habit, or really being able to spot when stress is causing you to overeat, or remember that you're tired and that's why you've got cravings, you have to get that structure and routine sort of down, because then you've got more capacity in your mind to then focus on just weeding out those bad habits and breaking them, because that takes effort and time. So that's, and then once that's all done, you're then starting to really focus on your goals and your motivation, because you've done all the, it's almost like your housework, isn't it? You've done all the housekeeping, you've got all that organized and tidied up and freed your mind. Because we only have, if we're trying to do too many things, work out the protein, work out what I'm having for tea tonight, thinking of when I have to shop, oh God, wondering whether I'm tired and that's why I've got cravings today, and then I'm trying to work out what my goal is. I mean, brain doesn't work like that anymore, does it? So that's where it's important. Get the structure right, understand what that is, get the routine going, work on the habits, and then work on understanding what your motivation is to move forward, and then just enjoy the process then of working out what you do, that enjoy the breakthroughs, and enjoying seeing who the person you become as a result of making all those changes. And I hope one day we'll all be able to stay in touch, and from all our various corners and adventures of the world, celebrate how far we've come and what we've achieved together, because that would be absolutely phenomenal. I really believe that women have got an incredible amount to offer to the world and society. If we look after ourselves, we can just go and do amazing things. So that's the process. So I hope that's useful. And as always, as I like to say at the end of these, is, if there's anything that this has brought up that means you'd like to have a conversation with me about it, or weave it into one of our regular catch-ups, you're very welcome to do that. And I always love your feedback on these things. It's really helpful to me. All right then, that's me done. Have a wonderful rest of the day, whatever you're doing, and I'll speak to you soon. All right, take care.